What's up, guys? We had, what was it, a 2-2 night last night, a slight loss. The NBA game got there. Atlanta Hawks outright win. Nice one there. Baseball was kind of brutal, man. Miami, if I'd played a first 5-inning play on that, it would have won. They scored 4 runs in the first inning and then didn't score again. They're up 4-2 after the fifth. Gave up, I think, like 5 runs in the last 3 innings or something like that. Total bullpen implosion, which I didn't see that much of a reason to play first 5 inning and take the bullpens out of the equation because the bullpens weren't really in a particularly bad spot in either way, but that's just bad. Maybe I'm focusing too much on the starting pitching matchup, so maybe I'm doing it again today. I'm playing too many games based off of that, but I don't know. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing what has worked for me, so it sucks. It sucks when that happens. And then the Padres, they didn't get there, obviously. Waldron, his strikeout walk numbers look good. He had 7 strikeouts and 1 walk in, 4 innings or something, but he gave up 9 hits and 4 runs. 9 runs would be really bad. 4 runs and 9 hits. Whatever. We move on. And then the under in the Detroit Mets game, that game was a 0-0 game after 9 innings. And I'm just sitting there like, they're going to score 9 runs in the 10th inning. And I'm going to lose this bet. It was under 8. I'm like, it's going to be 5-4 in the 10th inning. We go into the 10th inning and Detroit scores 5 runs in the top of the 10th. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is actually going to happen. But luckily it did not happen. The game ended 5-0. So the under still hit on that one, which obviously it should have, with 0 runs scored in the first 9 innings. You can't be more correct on an under than that. So that still got there. Moving on to today, we do have the NIT Final Four today, which I'm used to this being in Madison Square Garden, but it's not. It's in Indianapolis, Indiana, which I guess probably benefits Indiana State, who are still in this. I think at this point, though, I'm not going to play either of these games. At this point, it looks like there's movement on both favorites to the point where you can't really play either of them. You've lost too much value with Indiana State up from 1.5 to 3.5 as a favorite, going through the 3.5 with more of the cash than the tickets on them, but also public. And that is also the case with Seton Hall, who've moved up from 2.5 to 4.5, going through the 4.5. Similar situation there. Seton Hall against Georgia, Indiana State against Utah. I mean, the lean would be to both favorites still in that one, but you're giving up too much value, I think. Indiana State, obviously, everybody just wants to see them win it all because they're that trendy team, that mid-major that everybody likes because they have Avila there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We'll see if they can actually do it. Not going to get involved there. We'll move on to NBA. I guess let's do NBA here. I do have a couple NBA plays here. I have too many plays today, man. These cards are packed. NBA, I'm going to first be on Minnesota T-Wolves -8. It's up from 7.5 to 8. I don't think there are 7.5 still around there. Rockets look like a public underdog because of how hot they've been recently. And I guess maybe everybody knows that Towns is injured. I mean, I assume he's still injured. I don't know. Like, based on looking at this line, I can't even tell if this line is telling you that Towns is injured or not. I just like the spot, man. I could look real quick, I guess. Let me see. Towns. What do we got here going on here? Successful surgery, reevaluated in 4 weeks. That was a few weeks ago. There's no update, so he's not coming back yet. So that's out of the equation. Houston has 94% of the tickets, 78% of the cash. So they are public, very public, it looks like, with less of the cash than the tickets. In reverse live movement on the T-Wolves. I mean, Houston has been a nice story, and yes, they're still fighting to try to somehow miraculously get into the playoffs, get into these play-in games. They had reeled off a ton of wins in a row. 11 wins in a row, I think, and it finally came to an end on Sunday against Dallas. Dallas completely wiped them out. But I think when you have a long win streak that you lose like that in a game that you kind of emotionally get up for too, and it was a return home spot for them too, which wasn't the easiest spot. I think that halts your momentum, and you can see a team get hung over into the next game. So that's what I think might be the case. So as much as, I think you are going to get continuous effort from this Houston team, it's like it's kind of a situation where I think they might be hung over and like, what are they going to have left? They lost that long win streak. Like I said, when you lose a win streak like that, it's tough to get back up off the mat and play again. And they're running into a really good Minnesota team that I think may be able to stop them. Minnesota coming off an ugly loss in their last game to Chicago. So I think they're going to be focused, and they lost control of the 1 seed. I think the Thunder actually vaulted up into the 1 seed. So Minnesota, they still have something to play for as well. They're battling there for that 1 seed and probably going to be in a focused spot here after an ugly loss to Chicago, which, yeah, that disrupted a win streak of theirs too, but it was less of a significant win streak. And Minnesota, I mean, they're winning all the time, so they're kind of used to it. But it wasn't an 11-game win streak like that either, where it's like the team just isn't even used to being in a situation where they've lost a game anymore, which I think might be the case with Houston. Probably not the case with Minnesota, and I think they're in a nice bounce back spot after a pretty ugly loss to the Chicago Bulls. They don't really have anything up on the horizon. Toronto up next tomorrow, so I think they're going to have their focus on this Houston game. Minnesota Timberwolves. And then the other game I'm going to be on is kind of a classic play, even though I think both of these teams are not in the greatest travel spots here, really. I'm going to play on the Dallas Mavericks +1. This line has gone down on Golden State from 2-1. Golden State's public with 79% of the tickets, 58% of the cash. So they're public with less of the cash on them. So the cash discrepancy is indicating on the Dallas side and the money. It looks like the line movement has moved, a reverse line move. So that's the case with both of these NBA games that I'm on here. Reverse line movements, these market indicators, man, I like them. Reverse line move, I mean, we'll see what happens throughout the day, though, because sometimes those things can change. But I'm just going based on what I see in the morning. The line has moved, against the Warriors, and probably for good reason. I mean, Golden State, yes, they are fighting to maintain the last of the play-in spots, but with Houston's loss and Houston going up against Minnesota today, and let me see, is Houston playing an earlier game today than they are too? That's at 8:00. Yes. Wait, what am I looking at? Oh no, excuse me. Yeah, that's at 8:00. Golden State's at 10. Yeah, so by the time Golden State, so I'm already betting on Minnesota, and Minnesota is a big favorite. So it's likely that by the time Golden State's game starts, they might have their eye on that scoreboard, man, and seeing what Houston is doing. And if Houston is losing, Golden State might get a little bit complacent maybe, because they're looking pretty decent now. They have a little bit of padding now with a 2-game lead now over the Houston Rockets, and the Houston Rockets' huge win streak was halted there. So maybe Golden State's feeling a little bit better right now. Whereas Dallas, I mean, both of these teams are still fighting, but Dallas is really in a dogfight right now to stay out of the play-in games. They're 1.5 games out of falling into the play-in, which not that much of a difference between 1.5 and 2 games. Golden State 2 games away from falling out completely, but it just feels like Golden State is a lot safer with the Rockets just having that win streak lost. It kind of feels like the Rockets might kind of fade off after this, playing a really tough game tonight too, whereas Dallas, I mean, they're in the thick of it right now. They really don't want to fall into the play-in scenario here. They also still have a chance to get up ahead of the Clippers to get a home series in the first round too. So Dallas still has reason to play as well. They're still battling. Dallas playing a lot of road games in a row, so that does concern me. The things that concern me are that Golden State does still have a bit of motivation here, but maybe less so than Dallas, just because I think they're feeling a bit more comfortable there. Dallas, they are one of the hottest teams in basketball right now, though. So, yeah, they've played a bunch of road games in a row. They've won all of them. They've won 7 straight games or something like that. And I think that they just have a lot of momentum right now. And it's not like a train I would want to step in front of, really. But because I think Golden State's in the worst spot, though. So, yeah, Dallas is playing a bunch of road games in a row. That's true. They are playing it's only a second game in 3 days. They had a day off before the Houston game. Just they've had a couple more days off in the recent stretch than Golden State has as well, I think. Golden State's returning home from a road trip. Oh, no, they've had the same amount of rest, excuse me. Sorry. So never mind about that. But, yeah, Golden State, they are returning home from a road trip that took them to Minnesota where they lost, and then they won the remaining 4. They're playing in the Southeast and then Texas, and now they're coming back home with only 1 day off. It's a tough spot, man, even though, yeah, Dallas is a team that's going to draw their focus. It's a tough spot for Golden State, man, to maintain that in a return home spot that is typically a bit of a distraction spot. So I like the momentum with Dallas more, where Dallas is mid-road trip and they're staying out on the road, even though, yeah, it's tough to have focus playing so many games on the road. But I like it better for Dallas. That's what I'm going to do there. Let me see here. I thought there was one team that I was going against where they were in like a bad rest spot too, but maybe, I guess, yeah, I mean, all of these teams are kind of in similar rest spots. So I thought there was a team I was playing that was playing against that was on a back-to-back, but maybe that's in the NHL. Going to the NHL real quick. I'm on one game here, and that's going to be to lay this price, which is getting a little bit pricey with the New Jersey Devils. I was able to find minus 156 on this, which I think is a decent money line price here. Some of the situation is definitely factoring into the line here, which I don't love because some of the rest situation is factored into the handicap. I just don't know if it's going to be factored in enough here. New Jersey's up from minus 160 to minus 163, it looks like, according to pregame, with 67% of the tickets, but 81% of the cash. So they're a little bit public, but they do have the cash discrepancy, it looks like, on them, and it's pushing the line up. I still found that minus 156 price on New Jersey. I think this is a real bad spot for Pittsburgh. Now, maybe it's not even being accounted for in the line enough. Yes, both of these teams are fighting still, like, for their lives. Like, they're still alive, although it's highly unlikely they're going to be able to get wild cards at this point. Both of these teams are in similar positions as far as that's concerned. But Pittsburgh just actually pulled ahead of New Jersey. They played last night, so I think this is the spot I was thinking of. Pittsburgh just beat the New York Rangers last night. Now they're playing a third straight road game, although it's not that much of a travel spot going from Manhattan out to New Jersey, but still. This is a third straight road game. Now it's a back-to-back. It's a third game in 4 days. It's a fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. And it is a fifth in 8 days, with the first two of those both being at home. It's also, so it's a back-to-back. It's a bad rest spot, and it's a letdown spot coming up that huge win over the Rangers. And they do have Washington up next. And I believe Washington currently is sitting in the last wild card spot. So that's also maybe a big game. So is Pittsburgh going to overlook a New Jersey team that's now behind them in the standings, even though they're only behind them by 1 point? It is still possible, I would say. I think both these teams realize that they're not going to be in the playoffs at this point. Oh, excuse me, man. I just get so clogged up in the morning. It's so bad. And I'm fat. So what can you do? Pittsburgh, yeah. They're just in a really bad spot, which, yeah, some of it's being factored into the line. But like I said, maybe it's not being factored in enough. In New Jersey, they have 2 days off, so they're in a much, much better rest spot. They are returning home from a road trip, which normally I wouldn't like, but I do think they're going to be focused here because it's a Pittsburgh team that's ahead of them in the standings. They have 2 days off, and the last game of the road trip, they lost in real ugly fashion to Buffalo, and it was not a long road trip. I mean, they only went to the New York Islanders, which is really not far, and then up to Toronto is as far as they went, and then Buffalo. So they stayed basically in like the Eastern time zone there, I'm pretty sure. So not that much of a road trip. So I think they're going to be focused here. They have multiple days off. They have the big rest advantage here. Playing a little bit better, really, since they got their new coach. They've been playing decent hockey recently. And Pittsburgh, I just don't think they're that good a team. And the line's telling you that New Jersey is the better team, even though it is factoring in the fact that they're in a much better spot here as well. But I do think they're also the better team. So I think the line is basically warranted here. New Jersey Devils minus 156. Going over to the Major League Baseball slate, I got way too many plays here, man, in Major League Baseball. I just can't help myself. I see a lot of pitching matchups that I like and situations that I like, and I just can't help myself. First one is going to be up in the afternoon slate here. I'm going to fade the Milwaukee Brewers, even though it looks like they have the cash discrepancy, and they're up from minus 110 to minus 113 on the money line with 64% of the tickets and 82% of the cash. So they have the cash discrepancy. They've moved up on the money line here. I'm focusing a lot on these starting pitching matchups, man, but the bullpens, I think, are both in similar shape. I think they're a wash, basically, because neither of these teams played yesterday. So I don't think there's that much of a reason to take the bullpens out of the equation here. I mean, that comes down to, like, do you think this bullpen is way worse than the other bullpen or something like that? And I don't really get that into it. I look at how rested the bullpens are for the most part. So Milwaukee, I mean, they're going to be public, which they are, even though they do have the cash discrepancy. I mean, they're an undefeated team right now. They swept the Mets on the road to start the season. a 3-0 sweep with one of the games I think was postponed, but maybe they replayed it already. Maybe they didn't because they did have a day off here. Minnesota also had a day off. Minnesota looks a lot worse right now, man, because they took the first two against the Royals as expected, but then they lost 11-0 to the Royals, and that's what they're coming off of. That's an embarrassing loss, man. An 11-0 loss to one of the worst teams in baseball. I think that's going to focus Minnesota again. As much as I don't think baseball is that much of a focus sport necessarily, or a momentum sport to that much of an extent. A lot of it comes down to specific matchups. But when you're coming off an 11-0 blowout loss to a bad team like that, I think it means there's going to be value on that side, and I think it means that team's going to have reason to be angry and show up and really put in a good effort to try to win this game. Milwaukee, maybe looks a little bit too good right now with the sweep to start the season over a Mets team that we don't really know how good the Mets are, really. But look at this pitching matchup. I mean, you got Jacob Junis. Is that Jacob Junis? Jacob Junis? Jacob Junis is how I pronounce his name. He's kind of a journeyman pitcher. He's pitching for the Milwaukee Brewers here. I mean, his stats weren't particularly good last year, but overall his stats on his entire career, not great. ERA of 4.64, 1.34 whip. Strikeout numbers, okay. Strikeout walk rate, mediocre, I would say. Not like a huge strikeout guy, though, but just his numbers just aren't really that good across his whole career. Most of his career was with Kansas City. Not great. He pitched a little bit better with San Francisco, but it's a more pitcher-friendly environment there. Did slightly better. More in line with like his first couple seasons in Kansas City with those. Now he's on another new team here with the Milwaukee Brewers. But this is a guy he's been a reliever for a lot of his career. He started out as a starter for my Boston accent's coming in. Started out as a starter for Kansas City for a few years. They made him into a reliever for a bunch of the time once like the COVID season started to hit. And then he actually had some shortened seasons there. San Francisco had him as a starter for a bit in 2022, but then last year, he was almost entirely a reliever last year, and he only made 4 starts. So I'm not sure that I expect him to be able to go really deep into a game necessarily. These converted relievers like this, man, that just don't really have great stats, and they have just been around for a while, just kind of move back and forth between starting appearances and relief appearances. I don't love pitchers like that. And he's going up against Louis Varland, who is a starter. He's pretty new to the league. His stats, not that bad, really, with Minnesota. His ERA looked bad last year, but looking at the rest of his stats, 1.22 whip is not really that bad. 71 strikeouts in 68 innings is good, and 71 strikeouts and 17 walks is good. So his strikeouts per 9 are pretty good in his major league career across one season plus 5 games in the prior season when he came up and debuted in the majors in the 2022 season. Strikeout walk rate is good. I mean, these stats are not bad for Varland here. His ERA, I think, is just misleadingly high, especially last year, 4.63. All the rest of his numbers indicate that his ERA should not have been that high. Maybe he got a little bit unlucky, got hit around a little bit, but his stats are better than that. He is a better pitcher. He's a young guy who hasn't been in the league that much, and he's up against the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Brewers have never faced him before. So I think that's another one of those types of spots where you have a pitcher that's totally unfamiliar to. He's a young guy with good stuff, and he's totally unfamiliar to the opposing hitters. I like that, man. So I like that a lot. Varland, I think, has a big advantage here in this game as the starter. Because he's unfamiliar, I think he's going to have the edge. And Jacob Junis, the Minnesota Twins hitters against him are 31 for 74 lifetime, 419 opponent batting average there, 6 home runs, and only 8 strikeouts and 6 walks. So he has been rocked by these Minnesota hitters, man. Terrible stats and a pretty decent sample size. Give me the Minnesota Twins, at minus 102, I guess is the best you can get right now, which still means they're a slight underdog if you want to look at it that way. Next up will be, trying to get this done quick, the Texas Rangers getting a decent underdog price here, plus 134. A lot of this has to do with the pitching matchup as well. Looking at the bullpens here, though, I think the bullpens are kind of a wash because both teams, they did play yesterday, but neither team used their bullpens to much of an extent at all. So both of these bullpens are in decent shape coming into this game. Texas did win yesterday 9-3. So is that going to mean there's going to be more motivation on Tampa's side? Tampa also still looking for revenge for getting eliminated from the playoffs last year. I don't know. I don't know how heavy that's going to factor into this because the pitching matchup, this is a deceiving pitching matchup here with Andrew Heaney against Zach Eflin. Andrew Heaney for Texas, not the greatest stats, 1.38 whip last year. That's pretty high. 4.15 ERA. His ERA probably should have been higher with a whip like that. Not very good. His strikeout numbers are good, though. 151 strikeouts, 147 in the third innings. That's good. Just his walks are just way too high. But looking at his prior seasons, his walk numbers were not as bad as they were last year. Last year was kind of an outlier across his entire career. I don't understand how his walk numbers were that high. I mean, his career numbers aren't that great, but his whip last year was higher than it ever has been. Is he getting too old? I'm not sure about that. He's in his early 30s. I've never really considered him to be that great a pitcher, but his walk numbers were just an outlier as far as how bad they were last year. That could just be like a little bit of noise there, even though it was across one season. It was a season in a new environment, though. So is that going to continue with the fact that he's still in Texas? I'm not sure about that. But looking at this is where I really like this. His stats against Tampa Bay's hitters are 8 for 38 off him lifetime, a 211 batting average. So he has really fared well against Tampa Bay's hitters. They have not fared well against him. 10 strikeouts and 3 walks against Tampa. So that looks really good to me as far as Heaney is concerned. Then over on the other side, Zach Eflin, I mean, he does have one start this year that wasn't good. So maybe that means we'll get a little bit less value because his ERA looks really bad because of one bad start this year. But last year, his numbers were better than Heaney significantly with a 3.5 ERA, 1.02 whip. That was the best year of his career, man. Like, is he that good? Like, does he all of a sudden become good in his late 20s? I mean, maybe with the like pitching coaching, whatever, maybe, because that was his first year with Tampa. I mean, his last year with Philly was a little bit better than some of his other years. His career stats look a bit worse than that. If you take his entire career into account, his numbers are a bit worse than that really good season that he had last year with Tampa. He has a 4.31 ERA on his career, 1.24 whips. That's a little bit worse. He's certainly not a bad pitcher at all. He's a good strikeout pitcher. So I do like his, I mean, a decent strike. Last year, though, his strikeout numbers were way up, too. So, like, I don't know what happened last year where his numbers were just significantly different last year than throughout most of his career. He became a way better strikeout pitcher. His strikeout walk rate was unbelievably up last year, which is, I don't know what the deal is. If that's coaching, if he changed something as a 28-year-old with his mechanics, or do we consider that to be noise? I really don't know. But his first start this year wasn't good, so you might argue that he's going to bounce back. Also, does he have an advantage because Heaney hasn't pitched yet this season? Eflin has, so Eflin has that first start under his belt to get that like nervousness out of the way starting the new season. So is that an edge to Eflin? Normally, I would say maybe yeah, but I just can't get over the fact that Heaney's numbers are really good against Tampa's hitters. Eflin's numbers against Texas are awful. They're 14 for 33 off of him, Texas's hitters, with 3 home runs, and he only has 4 strikeouts and 3 walks against them. That's a 424 opponent batting average against the Texas Rangers hitter, so that is really not good. So I think this pitching matchup is a big mismatch here, and the line's gone up on Tampa from minus 135 to minus 144, it looks like. But I do see Texas being public, unfortunately, because the public is going to want to come in and take the World Series champs who already won the first game of the series and beat Tampa in the playoffs last year as an underdog. It does look too easy almost to take Texas here. But this pitching matchup, like digging deeper, I actually think the public is just right on this one. Heaney, 65%, Texas, 65% of the tickets, but 80% of the cash. So it does look like you do have the cash discrepancy, even though it does look like the line has moved up on Tampa. But either way, I think we can do it. It's a decent underdog price. Texas at plus 134, and you're getting that with like a really big pitching mismatch there. We'll do it. Next up, I'm going to play this game in a bit of a different way. The Chicago White Sox is where I'm looking in this game against Atlanta. And this is a game where Atlanta, on the money line, Atlanta is a big favorite. So that's why I'm looking to play this in a bit of a different way. Atlanta's down from a huge road favorite, minus 260, all the way down to minus 205 already. So it looks like there is significant money coming in various ways on the White Sox side. And I think for good reason here. 85% of the tickets, but only 75% of the cash. So very public Braves team. Of course, everybody knows how good the Braves are. But this pitching matchup, I think, is everything. It's real bad for Atlanta. But I am taking the bullpens out of the equation because the White Sox bullpen got used up, I think, significantly more than Atlanta's did yesterday, and they're probably the worst of the two bullpens anyway. So I'm just going to throw the bullpens out of the equation. So I am looking to go first 5 innings with this because I like the starting pitching matchup a lot in this one. But as you can see, the public, is on Atlanta because, of course, they're going to be on Atlanta. But it does look like there's significant money coming in against them in various ways. Atlanta's got Ronaldo Lopez pitching. He's a 30-year-old kind of journeyman pitcher. He's been around. He's bounced around. He's actually facing his former team here. He was on the White Sox for a majority of his career. So is that going to pump him up a little bit? Maybe, but he hasn't been on the White Sox he was on the White Sox last year, actually. He was on 3 different teams last year alone, which that kind of tells you he's just not really that good, though. So, yeah, I mean, he is probably going to be motivated to face the team that got rid of him last year, but is he good enough? I don't know. His career stats aren't good. 4.32 ERA, 1.3 WHIP. I mean, not incredible strikeout numbers either. The walk number's too high. The strikeout walk rate not good across his entire career. And he's just not that great a pitcher. Against the White Sox, he has been good, actually. So he has faced the White Sox in his these White Sox hitters, at least he's faced before. He's faced some of them. He's faced 5 of them before. And they are 8 for 37 off of him. That's not really that good. 216 opponent batting average, sure. But at least they are familiar with him. And because he was on the White Sox up until last year, it's also possible the White Sox coaching knows stuff about Lopez and knows how to approach him and how to hit him. So that advantage kind of goes both ways too. He only has 5 strikeouts and 3 walks against these White Sox hitters as well. So his stats aren't really that good, but I'm banking on Garrett Crochet here. Garrett Crochet. I hope it's Crochet and not Crochet. Garrett Crochet. He's French. No, I don't know. He has already pitched this year. He's made 1 start already this year, and it was a short start. He pitched 6 innings, actually. He did well, actually. He did really well in his first start, actually. That was his first start of the season. He's a young guy. He's in his early 20s, but he's been pitching in the majors since 2020, but he was a reliever for that entire time, and he just made a start for the Chicago White Sox. That was his first start of his major league career, and he did well. He went 6 innings with 8 strikeouts, 5 hits allowed, 1 earned run allowed. And no walks. That's a very good outing there. So is he going to take a step back? I'm not really sure because I like this a lot, man. The Braves only have 2 hitters who have ever seen him before. Adam Duvall and Matt Olson, and they're a combined 0 for 2 off of him with 1 walk. Yeah, okay, sure. But he hasn't been seen by these Braves hitters before. So I think that's an advantage to him because the Braves are unfamiliar with him. And Crochet, he has really good stuff, dude. There was one time coming into the 2020 season, I think he was considered to be the number 1 prospect in baseball, and I believe he has a fastball that he can throw at nearly 100 miles an hour is where it tops out. So he has some real overpowering stuff, some potential to really overpower guys. So I'm going to just bank on that pitching discrepancy there where I think you're getting value because people have no idea who Crochet is, even though normally I would not like to go with a converted reliever, but I think his stuff is good enough that I'm going to do it. You can get the White Sox plus a half run in the first 5 innings at plus 112. So actually in an underdog price. So I did that and I sprinkled a little bit on their money line for the first 5 innings as well at plus 165, 10% of the bet on that. But the run line first 5, that means that if the game is tied through 5 innings, you still win that bet. So I like that, banking on the starting pitching discrepancy there. And then to finish this off real quick before I have to get out of here, St. Louis plus 115. I'm going to go against the team that beat me last night. I think we're getting value on St. I think there's hidden value here where the pitching matchup on the surface looks like a complete mismatch that favors San Diego. And I actually think the complete opposite is true. So this is Mikolas against Darvish. The line is down on San Diego from minus 135 to minus 132 as a small home favorite. So they're not a very heavy favorite. It almost looks too easy to take San Diego here. 87% of the tickets, 72% of the cash. So they're public with less of the cash on the cash discrepancy on the St. Louis side. And the market looks like it's moving in the direction of St. Louis as well. And if you look at this, Darvish is obviously the better pitcher. I don't like Mikolas really. And his Mikolas' stats this year are also way worse too. So people are going to look at this and there's no reason why they're going to want to come in and play the St. Louis Cardinals here. But I look at it deeper than that. I say, how do these specific hitters match up against this specific pitcher? Well, the Padres hitters are only 204 against Mikolas, 10 for 49. So he has actually done pretty well against them. They've struggled against him with 9 strikeouts, 3 walks. That's pretty good. So his numbers are actually pretty good against the San Diego hitters. And then Yu Darvish, his numbers are really good to start the season. So maybe he will regress a little bit. I'm not sure, but he has been really hittable to these St. Louis hitters. Not that many of their hitters have seen him before, but enough of them have. And it's a lot of at-bats worth where all of their staple hitters have seen him before, and they're 30 for 99 off him. That's a 303 batting average with 6 home runs off him. So they have really knocked him around, even though he has 33 strikeouts and 7 walks against him. So his strikeout walk numbers are really good against them, but the hitting numbers are just awful. And 884 OPS as well against him. So the St. Louis hitters have definitely had their way with him. Goldschmidt, Carpenter, and Arenado really have good numbers off him. They've really knocked him around. Is he going to take a step back? Maybe. He hasn't been throwing that many pitches this year either. Hasn't gone that deep into these games, and maybe he's just getting warmed up, and maybe he's going to start going deeper into games. But I don't know. His first start against the Dodgers wasn't really that good, and then he had a good start against the Giants. But the Giants, maybe their lineup isn't quite as good. We'll see what happens there, but that's going to do it for me, man. So that's St. Louis plus 115. I got to get out of here. Peace. Have a good day. It is my birthday as well, so happy birthday to me. Peace.